Greetings from Scouse Farm. Another lovely day. A little bit of wind, but we've still got blue skies, so all is well in the world. And I'm at Rice Lane Farm, which is, or was, a graveyard, a cemetery, but is now still partly a cemetery, but also a farm, which is unusual, but it's brilliant as well. Because I didn't know there was animals in here, but it is literally a farm. I thought it was just like they called it the farm because it used to be one, but it is being used as an educational livestock type farm for kids to come and look at animals and learn a little bit more about them. So it is a lovely little thing to have in a city. But why am I here today? Well, it's to show you the grave. I don't really do these often, but this is I don't like doing graves of people who've recently passed, you know, like certain Liverpool, famous Liverpool people, like, you know, Ursula Black and Sir Ken, Lord of the Manor Dodd, who was unfortunately passed away not that many years ago. But this is for someone who passed away over 100 years ago. So I think enough time has been spent for me to feel okay about filming a grave to an individual who's passed. And his name is Robert Philippe Noonan, aka Robert Croker, and more commonly known and more famously known as Robert Tressell, the author of a very famous book which holds many hearts here in Liverpool and other working class cities within the UK and all over the world. And as I'm walking around, you might see some random animals, so keep your eyes peeled. You might see something I just walk past, because I'm trying to going to be reading some notes while I walk about as best I can. So he was born on the 17th of April 1870 as Robert Croker in 37 Wexford Street, Dublin, Ireland. He was the illegitimate son of a Samuel Croker, who was a former Royal Irish Constabulary Inspector, and he was raised as a Catholic because his father wasn't, but his mother was. And he was raised as a Catholic because his mother, Mary Noonan, baptized him in the Roman Catholic Church. So that's where he acquired the surname Noonan. And there's a little map when you're in here, if you want to have a little look around. I'll leave a link down below to Rice Lane City Farm, so you'll get to see where it is in Liverpool. But for those who are familiar with the city, you'll see another landmark the city is famous for, or infamous for, very soon. So you'll know exactly where it is. And it's this is, my dad told me about this, but also a subscriber, Julie, has mentioned that she's got some sort of family connection to Noonans. And it was my dad who said to me that somewhere on, not my dad's but my mum's side, in from my nan, or maybe my nan's nan, there's some sort of connection to the Noonans as well. So I think somewhere in my family there's a Noonan, which could also be related to the Mary Noonan. But he is most remembered for his pen name of Robert Tressell, and it was called Tressell because he was a painter and decorator. So it was named, he picked that name because they used trestle tables. And oh look, there's a little sign, I didn't even notice that before. So it's being chopped off a bit, but it says there, to the grave of Robert Tressell. So I could have done with seeing that before, because I walked all the way around the wrong way, but we got there in the end. And excuse me when I walk through, because there's these livestock gates, so I'll have the camera will wobble a bit while I try and close them as I go through. But I just opened that one to help me out because it was a bit of a stiff one. Stop laughing. Done it better that time. And Robert Tressell, I'll call him Robert Tressell for now, because that's how he's mainly known. So for the rest of the notes I'll mention Tressell, not Noonan. And he is educated, or was educated, and he was able to converse in a variety of languages. So he was gifted academically, but he chose not to go into academia because of his political and social beliefs, and instead he worked in mainly working class trades, as I said before, as a painter and decorator predominantly. He moved in 1890. He was arrested in Liverpool, where he was working as a sign writer, and he was sentenced to 6 months in prison And that leads me nicely onto that building you can see in the background, which you'll get to see a bit more of soon. So he was arrested in 1890 and sentenced to 6 months in prison for breaking into his sister's employer's house in Great Crosby, and he stole some silver, some ornaments and trinkets and things. Don't know why, but maybe it was some sort of revenge against his sister's boss, or maybe his sister just told him that there's quite a few pieces of silver in there, so he thought it was a nice little opportunity to earn a few quid. But anyway, he done 6 months in prison there, and then after that, by 1891, so when released from prison, he'd moved to Cape Town, South Africa, where he met and married Elizabeth Hartel in October 1891. They had a daughter, Kathleen, who was also quite prominent in his life, and the main reason why he is famous. So Kathleen was born on 17th of September 1892, and then as a family in 1894 they moved to Johannesburg, where Robert then worked as a foreman for a decorating firm owned by a Mr. Herbert Evans. And it was around this time that Robert and others started becoming increasingly involved in the formation of trade unions for immigrant workers in South Africa. What a lovely day. Look at that. A great backdrop. So that's part of his political beliefs as well. He felt very strongly about rights for workers, particularly with regards to the exploitations of the time, because, you know, there were no contracts, there were no workers' pay, sick pay, anything like that you take for granted today. So a lot of his political belief stems from trying to get equality, no matter where you come from or what position in life you actually occupy at any particular point in time. And he was pretty much famous for this book because of the social aspect of what he wrote. So I'll go on to tell you a little bit more about the book in a bit, but it's why he's known to so many people in Liverpool. Particularly my dad made me read the book, so I've read this book, and for those who've not read it before, it isn't an easy read. It is easy to read in regards of, you know, it's not like complicated, you don't have to work things out, but it just shows a lot of the horrible practices that went on to workers a long time ago. And a lot of his time and attention then shifted more and more towards his politics, and in 1897 he was granted custody of Kathleen, his daughter, after being granted a divorce from his wife Elizabeth. And in September 1901, Robert and Kathleen left South Africa while the Boer War was still being fought, and they settled in Hastings in Sussex. He worked again mainly as a painter and decorator, and a lot of his time was spent in churches, and he later became involved again in political activity when he set up the Hastings branch of what became known as the Social Democratic Federation in 1906. And it was in and around this time that he began work on what he is most famous for, which is the novel Ragged Trousered Philanthropists. And before it was called Ragged Trousered Philanthropists, he wrote it as Ragged Arsed Philanthropists, but naturally publishers changed the name when it actually got to print, and it was rejected, unfortunately, by 3 publishing houses in 1910, and that naturally sent him into a bit of a depression. But in order to save his manuscript, his daughter Kathleen made sure that it got saved, and she put it in a metal box and locked it underneath her bed so he couldn't burn it. There's no doubt he was a little bit upset about getting rejected, so she decided to keep it in a box underneath her bed for safekeeping. And as I mentioned before, in the background there you can see we got the prison, which looks like a castle. So if anyone in there is looking out, that's where we are. So we're very close to Walton prison. Get through this gate. But even though the father was a little bit despondent about being rejected, as I said before, look, you don't expect to see sheep when you're walking around. Well, I think the sheep anyway, the little fluffy things. I'll have a look closer in a minute. But the novel that he's famous for was actually published in 1914, which was after his death, which I'll talk about in a minute. But a lot of the socialist ideology was removed by the publisher Grant Richards, because Jesse Pope, who was a visitor to a house where Kathleen was working, Kathleen mentioned her father's manuscript to Jesse Pope, who was an author, and she then wrote an abridged version for her to get it published. But in doing so, they had to remove a lot of the socialist ideology because it was classed as subversion at the time, and governments did not want basically the poor people to start getting, let's say, uppity and causing any problems, which nothing's changed, has it? Let's be honest, nothing has changed. So it got published, but it was very, very watered down, and then it was later released in full in 1955 because they got the full manuscript. And then one of the most, I'd say, popular examples of socialist ideology, and it's very important to a lot of people. So even though he passed away in 1955, it still remains a very, very important work with regards to workers' rights and trade unions and the movement since. And unfortunately, Robert passed away in Liverpool, so that's why I'm coming to this little, what is now a farm, what was a cemetery. So he passed away on the 3rd of February 1911 of pulmonary tuberculosis, and he was aged only 40 years. He was in Liverpool at the time, arranging passage to Canada and trying to earn the money to get him and his daughter to Canada, because he was fed up and sick of life in the United Kingdom, like a lot of people are even today, and they just wanted to get out and go somewhere better to start afresh. And he is buried here in what is known as a pauper's grave in the Rice Lane Farm, formerly the Liverpool Parochial Cemetery, and 12 others are buried on this same plot, which you're about to see now. And the reason it's got a stone now is because in 1977 a local socialist, labour or trade union, I'm not sure which, but a local party anyway of trade unions got together and funded this headstone so he could be remembered, because paupers used to be buried without headstones because it cost money to put headstones down, and they were just buried in cemeteries in basically unmarked graves, or maybe if they were lucky they got a little stick or something poking out at the top. And maybe they're examples of former paupers' graves, I'm not sure, but the very tiny headstones there you can see poking through the grass. And this is in memory of Robert Noonan, aka Robert Croker, aka Robert Tressell, and it says 18th of April 1870, but the research always says the 17th, so I think the 18th would be more accurate. But even on his own official site it says the 17th of April, so I imagine there's a discrepancy on that one. And other than this grave that you're looking at now, there's a blue plaque outside what was one of the old Liverpool tropical medicine buildings in Pembroke Place in town centre. So if you're going through Liverpool town centre, there is a blue plaque to him outside that, because was the hospital where he passed away when he was in Liverpool. And in keeping, they tried to find the names of all the other paupers who were buried in the grave. So this is the other people who were buried with Robert, and I'll just try, without stepping on it, try and zoom in so you can see this eulogy of some description. And through squalid life they laboured in sordid grief they died, those sons of a mighty mother, those props of England's pride. They are gone, there is none can undo it, nor save our souls from the curse, but many a million cometh, and shall they be better or worse? It is we must answer and hasten and open wide the door for the rich man's hurrying terror and the slow foot hope of the poor. And that is the eulogy to Robert Noonan, Robert Tressell, author of the Ragged Trousered Philanthropists. Born in Ireland, lived in England, South Africa, and passed away in Liverpool. So I'll leave it there, viewers. There's quite a few people walking around. So thank you all very much for watching. I hope you have a great day. I'm just still staggered that there's some sheep next to me at the moment. I'm going to go and look at these now. And Scouse Farm, we'll see you all again soon.